To arrive, I'd like to first ask if you can hear me well. So if you're someone, thank you, who could give me a thumbs up just like that. And I invite you to simply begin to settle in, making sure you have a comfortable place to be and rest for our session today. And Dawn, shall we get started?
Yes, please.
Okay. So welcome, everyone. I'm Eden. I might be new to many of you. And I'd like to invite us first, as we settle in, to just begin to rest your eyes closed, folding your gaze from the external to the internal world, and inviting yourself to begin to settle, to arrive here. Thank you so much for being here today. And our format will be a 30-minute meditation, followed by a Dharma talk, and then we'll open it up to have conversation. Open it up to your questions and inquiries, and that's such a juicy place, such a rich place of learning. So I invite you to participate when we get to that part. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are arriving from. And before we get started, take a minute to simply connect with your intention, your motivation for practice, for being here. Get in touch with your heart's motivation. I am arriving feeling very enlivened about today's topic, the radiant invitation of darkness. And there's two things that I'll be emphasizing today in my teaching. And the first is, in a world where we tend to reject darkness, label all that we wish we could push away as dark, misunderstand darkness, even demonize darkness. What actually is darkness, and what is the invitation in our practice in Dharma of darkness, of endarkenment alongside enlightenment? And the second thing I'm going to emphasize today is inviting us to explore together what is actually possible beyond this duality between light and dark that we hold on to so stubbornly. Something that's caused so much suffering for humanity for such a long time. And what is the freedom of the heart that's available to us when we really investigate and let go of this duality? So let's begin. With your eyes resting closed or in a soft gaze, in the darkened stillness, please begin by taking in a few deep, conscious, full body breaths. Inviting your breath to begin to relax you. with attention turned within, beginning to cast your gaze upon the internal landscape, just noticing in what state you are arriving here right now. Be aware as your breath returns to its natural rhythm of the pace and quality of the mind. Just bringing curiosity to your experience. Be aware of how you're feeling in this moment. And whether you're present to difficult, heavy, painful feelings this morning, or whether you're present to inspiration, lightheartedness. Can you meet whatever is here in your emotional experience with openness, with welcome? Being with what is. And as you bring more awareness to your physical body, just noticing what the weather of your body is today. Be aware of your body's relationship with gravity, feeling the weight and shape of your body resting on the surface beneath you. Feeling yourself supported by the ground, the earth beneath. And as you bring awareness to physical body, I invite you to allow for a softening, a relaxation. Anywhere you might notice surface tension, giving yourself permission to rest here, to let go of effort. Casting your gaze now into the heart, just noticing what's in your heart today. Just beginning to listen to the deeper undercurrents of your experience. And perhaps with breath as anchor, begin to allow your awareness to expand organically. Resting in presence. Aware of the internal and external landscape at the same time. And as we rest here in the spaciousness of awareness, remember that there is nothing to do in meditation, nothing to solve, nothing to fix or change or judge, nothing to strive for, nowhere to get to. Simply allow yourself to rest even more deeply. In the spaciousness that welcomes all of you. No part, nothing left out. The spaciousness, the darkness that welcomes life as it is. Just being with what is. Thinking of meditation as the practice of resting in the dark, listening to life as it unfolds moment by moment. So if you notice yourself efforting as we sit, see if you can soften effort just a bit. Coming back to the receptivity that is your natural state. Consciously allowing life to move through as we meditate. If your attention has begun to wander off, gently but firmly bring yourself back here, back home. Noticing what's here for you in the mirror of stillness. As we continue our meditation, I'd like to share some words from Rilke, who, in my experience, always says it so clearly. You, darkness, of whom I am born, I love you more than the flame that limits the world to the circle it illuminates and excludes all the rest. But the dark embraces everything, shapes and shadows, creatures and me, people, nations, just as they are. It lets me imagine a great presence sitting beside me. I believe in the night. So as we continue to rest here in spacious awareness, in the dark, in the place of nothing to do or strive for or judge, just consider the inquiry for a moment. If darkness is not the absence of light, which is so often how we define it, how we perceive it, what is it the presence of? If emptiness is not the absence of something, what is it the presence of? Just holding this inquiry gently, with ease. Noticing your experience. In a world of so much doing, busyness, striving, so much reactivity, discrimination. Notice the impact of just resting in the receptive, restorative, spacious, all welcoming consciousness of darkness. Please now allow your breath to begin to deepen. Be aware of your connection with gravity once again. This particular place on the earth where you are anchored, where you are rooted right now. See if you can be aware of breathing through the front, the back, and the sides of your body. Allowing your breath to breathe you. And I'd like for you to turn your attention now towards gratitude, appreciation. And if you'd like to, it feels natural, you can rest a hand at the center of your heart. And simply take a moment to acknowledge within yourself that which you feel bone deep gratitude for in this moment. Even with all of the ups and downs, all of the wild challenges we are facing in these times. So find your anchor in gratitude. Please be sure to include yourself in your gratitude, appreciating yourself for your practice, for your motivation, and also to appreciate this group of people who's gathered today to spend time in community together, even with your eyes still resting in the dark. Cast your gaze upon this energetic field, this community. Just offer a greeting from your own heart. And let's take in one more deep breath together, breathing in deeply, exhaling fully. You can gently open your eyes if they're closed. Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you today. And thank you to the Wild Heart Sangha for hosting me. And as we move into today's Dharma teaching, followed by open space discussion, I'd like to invite you to rest in the same quality of deep listening that you brought to your meditation. Just letting yourself connect with your natural receptivity. We access deep listening through efforting less rather than more, through relaxing our body and opening the orifice of our attention to include the inner and outer landscape. I am here in Western North Carolina, not too far away from many of you. And I woke up this morning to a very, very dark sky. That moment in the year when there begins to be a darkening of the season, when we begin to spend a little bit more time in the darkness, less time in the light. And given that we're entering the darker seasons, and we could also say that we're entering the darker months of the global pandemic, I felt that it would be aligned to offer a teaching today about the radiant invitation of darkness. I am a lover of darkness. I have always loved the night sky. And when I lived for 7 years as a monastic in a silent Zen monastery, we were off the grid and so got to spend time as soon as the sun began to go down in the spacious, vast night. Today, and in today's world, we're experiencing the overlighting of our planet, the overlighting of our planet. Over 90% of the United States is artificially lit up at night, 60% of Europe. So this is yet another expression of humanity's rejection of, and I would say great misunderstanding of darkness, great misunderstanding of darkness. How can we access wholeness if we're continually pushing away and cutting off one half of our humanity, one half of nature? So today I'd like to invite some investigation. And as I named earlier, I want to explore with you both what the luminous invitation of darkness actually is and how important it is in this time when we are navigating so much collective disruption, distortion, disorientation, challenge. How important it is that we really begin to turn towards the teacher of darkness, that we begin to bow to the mystery that's being presented. And at the same time, wow, what is possible for us when we're actually willing to shed this very basic, I would say, foundational duality between light and dark that's pretty much been with humanity for a very, very, very long time. So we talk a lot in practice about enlightenment. Enlightenment. And I think it's important to bring curiosity to what we mean when we speak of enlightenment and also to what gets left out. What might be the invitation of endarkenment alongside enlightenment at a time when human beings are struggling royally and really need to find a way back to wholeness, wholeness of embodiment, wholeness that goes beyond this constant exclusion of dark and trying to get to the light. So just consider as I talk today how my words impact you. Consider what's touched on in your own experience and what your own experience is of first this rejection or dislike of darkness. Just consider in your own self. When you look up, even in the dictionary, what darkness is, the definition is always pointing to the absence of light, the absence of light. And it's always pointing to whether we're talking about physical or symbolic darkness, spiritual darkness, something ominous, something bad. We don't really define light as the absence of darkness, do we? So I've always found that fascinating. And for me, in my practice over many, many years, I can say from my heart that the time that I've spent with the teacher of darkness has been the most valuable Dharma teaching I have received. That it hasn't so much been about seeking revelation through illumination, but I think that that theme is something that's humans have invested in for a really long time in many wisdom traditions, many spiritual paths. But it's really been about hanging out in the dark, the unknown, the mystery, that which I might have wanted to turn away from. So consider that if we want to sort of remember what darkness actually is and what the teacher of darkness can actually bring us, we don't have to look too far. We can start by just looking to the natural world, okay? All biology on planet Earth needs both light and dark. So while I'm teaching about darkness today, it's always with the overlighting motivation of bringing back the partnership of light and dark and the alchemical relationship of light and dark in our own practice. And I'll talk about that more. Okay. In nature, we might notice the magic of the embryo resting in the dark womb for 9 months, protected from light. The seed, before it germinates, resting in the dark under the soil. The caterpillar in the cocoon going through a wild transformation that can only happen in the sheath of darkness. Many wisdom traditions throughout history have absolutely revered darkness, have received so much teaching from the night sky, the dark cave. Tibetan Buddhist, Taoist, the Shinto, the Lakota, the Dagara tribe in Africa. There are many who revered darkness as a primary spiritual teacher. And so spent time and did a lot of rituals that they engaged in, hanging out in physical darkness. I think it's important to acknowledge that in today's world, and this is one of the invitations I think of this entire year that's been so difficult for so many, okay, and that has brought to light so much reactivity, so much othering, so much judgment, so much distortion. It's helped us to see more clearly some of the unconscious biases, yeah, some of the unconscious but very firmly held limiting beliefs that we're carrying as a collective, that we're going to need to let go if we want to both navigate global uncertainty, which is here and now, with more willingness and more grace, and also if we're going to open pathways for a more regenerative way of living in relationship with ourselves and with the planet. And so we see now coming to the surface much more than ever before the unconscious biases that have been passed down through patriarchy, through colonialism, through capitalism, a very me-centered as opposed to aware of we consciousness mentality. And I think it's important to acknowledge that even Buddhism and the mindfulness world, even modern day spiritual pathways, have been very influenced by patriarchal perception, by colonialism and capitalism. So there, through this bias, can be a way that even on our path of enlightenment, seeking enlightenment, we can sometimes fall into a demonization of the darkness while we're trying to get to the light, really believing that this duality is actually true and real, really believing and feeding hierarchical perception, when the primary thing we are asked and required to let go of on the path of awakening is hierarchical perception. It's done. It's not true. It's just a habit. Okay, something to consider. This patriarchal bias has, and you can turn to your own experience and see if this feels true at all, but it's encouraged often a movement towards rationalization and philosophical understanding over embodiment and softening into the tender space of the heart. It's invited sort of an up, and away approach to spiritual practice, rather than an invitation to really move down and in to our bodies, the deeper undercurrents of our experience. So just pause for a minute as you listen, connecting with your breath. And consider, if you will, in your own life, any ways that you're aware of, having affirmed this rejection of darkness, this hierarchy of seeing light as the place to get to. Perhaps it's manifested as a misunderstanding where you labeled parts of your own psyche, parts of your human shadow or trauma dark. Perhaps it's manifested through judging others through the lens of light versus dark. What I'm speaking of is certainly at the root of the crisis globally of systemic racism and othering based on the color of one's skin. But it's also contributed to misogyny, the rejection of more feminine ways of being. When I say that, I am talking about to speak about feminine and masculine as they exist in each and every one of us, not pointing to the gender war. This rejection of darkness has certainly contributed to our disconnect from the natural world. Yeah. So just notice how it's manifested in your own being, in your own being. It's my experience that when we label something as dark without turning to, which I'll speak about more in a minute, the qualities of darkness, which are here calling us forth into deeper wholeness and restoration. When we label something as dark in this rejecting way, it's almost as if we're putting it into a hole, a dungeon somewhere, where we can then justify to ourselves turning away from it. Justify turning away from it. Justify, that's dark, so I can't go there. That's dark, so I can't find my own wholeness until I have fully gotten rid of that or transcended that. That's dark, so I can't stay present with it. I can't stay here in my body in the strength of the open heart to be with and open to this particular experience. When we in practice allow ourselves to really understand the medicine of turning towards rather than away from every single thing that we have ever labeled dark in our entire lives, that is when we begin to access freedom of the heart. That is how we begin to access the strength of the light within, we might say, our fierce compassion. And it's within each and every one of you. It's who you actually are. But we shy away when we turn away. We hold on to old small self-identity when we turn away. We shy away from our own inner light. So the willingness to turn away, and this is certainly an invitation of these times, from that which we have pushed away for so long as a species or pushed away individually. The invitation is to trust that from open-hearted presence, from stillness, we can bring that to whatever it is into the spacious, welcoming, dark womb of the heart. We can bring all of it in. You know, I see this rejection of darkness that I've been talking about a lot in the degree of divisiveness and reactivity that is across the US this year. it's tremendous. There's a tear in the fabric of human relationship that's tragic. It's tragic. And that also points to the next step of our evolution. Wow. It is vital that we heal this tear. It is vital that we, again, I'm going to point to heal the hierarchical perception, the discriminating, quick to judge, quick to find my opinion, quick to other, quick to position my perspective against yours, that we actually have to let that go and drop instead into learning how to see one another in the dark. Many spiritual traditions, that's equated to seeing with the heart. So again, just pause, connecting with your breath. So darkness is not the absence of light. It's an essential expression of nature. It's a vitally important consciousness in itself. You might think of darkness as the more restorative yin aspect of nature, of all of our nature. You might think of darkness as the empty space from which all of life arises and from which all creativity arises, all insight, every insight you will ever have. We might think of darkness as the stored rather than expressed energy of the universe. There's a beautiful story of the Buddha in his very early years of being on the spiritual path. In that moment when he was living as an ascetic, pushing, efforting, cutting himself off from his body, trying so hard to get to enlightenment, to purify, to get away from the dark and to the light. And it just wasn't working. Just wasn't working. And he had a memory arise of being a young boy, resting in the mothering shade of a tree. And he remembered the peace, the well-being, the wholeness that he felt simply resting in the maternal shade of a tree. So just hang out with that image for a moment. I'll share that this morning when I rose and I did my morning practice, I was present to a lot of grief. I recently lost an elder in my life, and it's been about 10 days, but it's just still feeling so tender, so tender. And I just felt such bone deep gratitude to be able to spend my morning not turning away from it, not having any inclination that I needed to try to fill space. I'm sure many of you can relate to moments when you've tried your hardest to fill the empty space in order to get away from it. To simply let myself rest into and be held by the darkness of the morning and open my heart completely to the tenderness of this grief. For whatever reason, I've had a unique Dharma path as a practitioner and a teacher. I feel that I've been given instruction to speak to the teacher of darkness, the teachings of endarkenment alongside enlightenment. And there's a book on this topic that'll be coming out next year. But for me, everything, everything in my path has been a pointing to receiving darkness as a generous and loving teacher. In Zen, we always practice beginner's mind. Some of you might have a beginner's mind practice as well. Beginner's mind being the instruction, the wise instruction to meet everything in our life experience, to meet every experience with absolute openness, receptivity, understanding the wisdom and the strength and power of emptying out rather than trying to fill. That means of emptying out of our assumptions. We're so often not even aware of the millions of assumptions we're carrying about the world, about ourselves. So beginner's mind, the emptying it out, the meeting this moment and the pregnant possibility of darkness. It's a place of all possibility, a place of just being able to be a participant in the unfolding rather than inserting or imposing, which we often do through our egos, our self onto life, rather than exercising the mind of limitation and separation. Yeah. So even when I began my path, and certainly when I moved to the monastery where I trained, there was a sense of completely having to let go of the part of me that wanted practice just to be about understanding and attaining understanding that I could hold on to, and that instead I was being invited to learn how to walk every day through the dark, how to walk through the mystery, how to walk in the humility of beginner's mind, not knowing. And in doing so, letting the heart's capacities strengthen. The heart as an abode of perception beyond what we know in today's world, in the dominant paradigm, I would say, where we're so bent towards rationalization, cognitive understanding, identity, that which we can hold on to and is familiar. So in these times of disruption, of distortion, we can say these are dark times simply because these are times of absolute uncertainty, not knowing. A time when we're really being asked to walk in the dark. And if you can just imagine for a minute yourself walking through the dark as opposed to walking along a familiar, known, well-traveled path in the light of day, you know that it requires a slowing down, yeah? It requires an opening up your sensory perception, okay? Much greater than when you're on that familiar, well-known road. It requires attunement, it requires receptivity. So what is one of the profound invitations of darkness? It's to open up our relational intelligence, to remember the interconnection, the weak consciousness. Yeah, that's who you already are. You all know this well. You have a practice. You know that the mind of separation, the mind of limitation is loud. Yeah, it's loud, it's redundant, repetitive. So sometimes it's so loud that when you're turning to it as authority, projecting authority outside of your own heart, you're leaving the more subtle, attuned abode of perception that exists only when you go down and into your body. Your body is the portal to this quality of perception I'm speaking of. So this way of navigating life, learning to see more with the heart than through the eyes of discrimination and labeling and judging, even though that's so popular in today's world. Yeah. This way has served me continually on my path. It served me as an activist in the realms of social justice and environmental healing. So much to be with that feels overwhelming at times. So much news to take in that I can't even digest up here in the rational mind. How is this even possible? But here in the domain of the heart, when we turn towards and rather than away, there's a strength that gets developed that's about remembering that we were made for this, remembering that we're instruments for healing beyond anything we can rationally understand. We don't get there through turning away. We get there through turning towards. We get there through resting in the mystery itself, in not knowing. Some of you know that I spent over a decade of my practice navigating Lyme. I got bit by a tick when I was living as a monastic. And any of you who've navigated chronic illness who have loved ones who have know that's an intense experience. That's a deep dive into uncertainty, never knowing what the day will bring, not being able to rely upon a familiar terrain, even inside your own body. And very quickly, I began to understand that this experience was a teacher of love, because it required me, as soon as I became willing, to go down into a strength, a resilience, and a level of fierce compassion, which meant everything that in my limited small self perception seemed dark or difficult or painful or too much or too scary, those labels all dissolved. They all dissolved. There's a quote from the Kashmir Shaivist tradition that says, "There is no darkness within, only light unseen." Within each of us is the great Eastern sun that never sets. But if we're going to continue to affirm and rely upon the discriminating factors of the judging mind, how can we remember this? So the invitation of this time of disruption and the invitation of any personal challenges that you might be facing, the invitation of uncertainty, it's so big, it's so generous. There's an entire shift in the quality of our perception that we can make ourselves available to, that we can allow to open, that we can offer one another. It's about learning to see in the dark or see with the heart instead of seeing through our familiar lens. Guess what? It's the lens that has confused humanity for generation upon generation. It's not true now. It wasn't true then. It's easier than we think to release it, to remember who we really are. So just pause for a minute, yeah? Close your eyes. Just feel your body resting on the surface beneath you. Feel your breath moving through your body. In the dark, bring awareness to the internal landscape. Bring awareness to the outer landscape. Just noticing sound, temperature, the feeling tone of the space you're in. Bring awareness to the inner and outer at the same time. And when you feel ready, you can gently open your eyes. Okay. So let's begin now to open up the space.
Yes. Just one note before we get going, and let me
Yep.
this. Where did I put that button? Um, for our Facebook viewers, we're gonna let you go at this time, so that people who are on Zoom can feel a little bit more free to share whatever they want to share.
Yeah.
Um, the link I initially posted for the Zoom was incorrect, so I posted a new link in Facebook in the comments section. So if you want to come join us on Zoom, that link works. So, all right, we're going to stop our Facebook. Thank you for coming, all
For
of
those,
you.
thanks for being here. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, and now I'm going to allow you guys to unmute yourselves if you want, and we'll see how that goes. And if we need to, we'll put it back on and do like raising the hands or whatever.
Okay. Yeah. And I just like to affirm that all questions are welcome. Your questions are so generous. People learn so much from one another's questions. I think I see a hand already up. I'm not sure. Kit, is that your name?
My hand wasn't up, but you must have energetically felt because I was about to. Wow, my heart is like racing so hard right now.
Take your
Thank
time.
you. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you. This feeling I have right now reminds me of when I would like run around in church as a little kid, and then my mom would like put her hand on my shoulder and she's like, sit down. Whenever I sick today, I was like, oh, I know this. I meditate on death. Like, I know this. And then as soon as I sat down and you started guiding us, my body was like, woof, and all of the tears, all the medicine started coming. And naturally, and then my mind was like, come on, you gotta be joking with yourself. Like, and so as the two kind of started to come together, I started to ask myself, who am I outside of being a change maker? Who am I outside of someone who is working endlessly to bring light? And the answer, I had none. And it started to get pretty scary. Like I had to open my eyes. And I asked myself, how does it feel in my body to already be taken care of? And then the next like feeling tone and thought was like, I have no idea. And so this idea of being in the dark is not foreign. But if I was to give this darkness, like, I imagine it being like a home, but instead of being able to sleep in that home, it's like I'm constantly rearranging the objects. And I'm thinking about how I can plan to bring in the light. Like this idea of resting in the darkness, no.
Yeah. And as you presence that, can you tell me what you're experiencing in your body, in your being?
Just like this really strong pounding in my chest and like my shoulders. They're tense, but it's a little bit of like dropping, and it's just kind of hot between my shoulders and my ears, and a little bit tingly.
Yeah. And is there anything more you'd like to presence and give voice to before I offer some encouragement?
No, I just want to say thank you, and I just want to offer compassion toward my head that thinks that I've just somehow got this shit together, and I'm grateful for my body who's like, nope. That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for what you shared. And from that last piece you spoke, I think we can all connect with how often we think we know something. This is why beginner's mind is such a awakening teaching, just to rest in not knowing and to go into our not knowing. And there's so much that's very rich in what you shared, that dynamic of, as a change agent, I'm in the dark all the time, and yet I'm rearranging the furniture. I'm trying to find ways to bring in more light without giving myself permission, even acknowledging the choice that this darkness also offers the most restorative force in nature. It's darkness. It's darkness. It's the darkness that embraces everything. It's the darkness beyond all doing or striving. So I come from a family of activists. My practice has been subtly and profoundly intertwined with activism for as long as I can remember. And one of the things that I quickly became aware of in my younger years as a change agent was, wow, and many of you will be able to relate to this, gosh, the popular habit of burnout, of finger pointing, of rearranging the furniture, of trying to battle the dark to get into the light. I became aware in my own self that I was becoming exhausted in the early years of my practice of trying to battle my inner darkness, my demons, my imperfections, my traumas, before I thought I could get to the light. And my interest at that point became curious, very curious about what more was possible for human beings. For instance, even working for people I felt were doing such powerful work in the world, the way they were going about it seemed much more depleting and then regenerative. And my early path of practice seemed much more like the path of a solo heroic warrior trying to battle the dark to get to the light. It's exhausting, folks. It's not what we're here for. It's exhausting. And it has everything to do with misinterpreting darkness. We've been so trained to push away darkness to get to the light. You know, I grew up in California, and I sometimes talk about the culture of sunshining that kind of had this pervasive message of keep things positive. Well, I started navigating heavy grief at the age of 11 when I lost my father. You want me to keep things positive? So I learned how to put a fake smile on for years as a teenager with so much pain inside. Practice invited me to take off that mask, to let go of sunshining, and to actually begin to rest in the tender, open space of the heart that already exists within you. that has room for it all. You know this. I'm here to remind you today, because what we tend to do is we practice this wildly open-hearted space in some domains, but not every domain. And now's the time to allow it to spread, to be widespread. It's who you really are. It's regenerative. You can allow your work to be carrying you rather than depleting in that way of the heroic solo warrior. By the way, this is part of the patriarchal bias I was pointing to. You know, historically, and this has impacted Buddhism and mindfulness. We're not free of this bias, folks. Historically, starting from long ago, I think starting from when humans truly disconnected from the natural world, and that's maybe 12,000 years ago when we started practicing agriculture, land ownership, all kinds of shit that started creating more patriarchy and hierarchy in our relationship with nature. In the Cartesian era, this very Puritan demonization of all things dark, certainly of wisdom traditions that were about other forms of knowing other than rationalization. There was a Holocaust of the feminine during that time over a period of 300 years. We refer to it as the Burning Times, in which at least 9 million people were murdered through this rejection of darkness I'm talking about. So that all led to, the Age of Enlightenment in the 18th century was all about rationalization as God. And this has impacted the globe. It's impacted our ways of seeing. This is this up and away approach. Yeah. And so going back down and into our bodies, and also just opening up both to physical darkness and symbolic darkness again with beginner's mind. What actually is darkness if not the absence of light? How can I remember this as a restorative and compassionate teacher that welcomes all? Yeah. So before we move on, I'll just ask, is there anything else you want to say regarding that? Does that give you some encouragement to?
This just makes it less personal,
Mm-hmm.
which is helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sometimes the larger context helps to soften that. Yeah, you're welcome. Who else? Again, all questions welcome, and also reflections, just awarenesses you're having. Yeah. Rafaela?
Can you hear me okay?
I can. Yeah. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. I just feel really curious around how we can have got so, and I guess I can just speak for myself, but how I can get so carried away with the idea that dark is fearful and dark is bad, because who I am in my very ground is vast and all accepting, and has no judgment around anything that I may feel. And I know that so deeply, and it's my very ground of being. And yet, how can we have got so carried away with this notion that dark is fearful and dark is bad?
Yes. It's the conundrum, isn't it? It's why all of our practice is about remembering who we really are, who we already are, who we actually are. When we pause and meditate, whether it's formal meditation or just pausing in our day, which I hope we're doing as often through the day as we can to connect within, we are resting in the already and always existing quiet, the empty space, the darkness that is the backdrop of our experience, that is the tapestry of living interconnection. It never, ever leaves us. It can't. It's life. It's who we are. But we regularly leave it. We leave it. And so one piece about that I'll speak to, Rafaela, is that, it's so helpful in practice to develop both a badass and lighthearted relationship to our own egos, yeah, and therefore to the collective ego. And so that means really being discerning about, what am I listening to? What am I believing? When is my ego in the driver's seat? And remembering the possibility of stepping back so that ego is not so much in the driver's seat, but also being aware with a light heart, though it's also very humbling, of how much juice ego gets from separation, how much juice ego gets from suffering. And so consider that fear of the dark. On one hand, picture yourself, imagine yourself just resting under the shade of a tree, or relaxing under the night sky, or softening your gaze to meditate. Such a peaceful, restorative experience. And yet to the ego, and I hope each of you here can reflect on this in terms of your own experience, ego is terrified of darkness, terrified of empty space, terrified of the living tapestry of interconnection, because it takes away the ground for ego to stand on of separate self, me and my little bubble. So that's why love, we say we want love and intimacy and connection, but it's terrifying to ego. It's death to ego every time. Even sometimes when people come on meditation retreat, and maybe some of you have had this experience at the opportunity to drop the mode of doing, filling, judging for a number of days, there's at first this kind of resistance. Oh gosh, I can't let myself surrender to this empty space. I can't let myself surrender to this void. That's terrifying. And then when you do, you realize this void is a vibrantly alive place. There's nothing to be afraid of here. This is the ground of restoration and regeneration. And our confusion is cleared up. But because we're stubborn humans and we have egos, sometimes we have to be reminded again and again and again. That's why practice is all about reawakening again and again and again. Remembering the already awakened state. Not, no, you can't get there till one day, years from now, when you've gotten victory over all darkness so you can get to the light. Not like that. It's already here. It's here and now. It's here and it welcomes you where you're smooth and where you're cracked. It's already here. Yeah. Thank you, Rafaela. And so just pause, noticing how each person's question impacts you, touches you. Looking inside and seeing if there's any question or reflection that you have. Nice to see a four-legged friend on the set of screens with us. That's always good.
I'd like to share reflection.
Can you share your name first?
Meg.
Thanks, Meg.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this talk this morning. This was wonderful. I probably like a month ago decided that I wanted to commit to my sobriety. And I've noticed that a lot of what has been coming to me in that is this expansive space, and all this space of like, there's a lot of shadow stuff here, and there's a lot of just so much space. And I really resonated with what you were sharing about the rush to fill it, and the rush to bring light to it, and the rush to understand it and intellectualize it. And it is scary to notice the desire to do that, and also not necessarily have to act out that desire in that space, and to just sit with it and inside of it. And yeah, I just really, this is a really scary talk. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that you were willing to share it with us. And I'm grateful that I was here. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I want to appreciate you for your commitment and your courage. Congratulations. And just a couple of things I'd like to offer. And one is that, just as you were pointing to in your own experience, wow, it seems so scary. I can witness the part of me who wants to fill the space. You know, what you're describing is, it's like, and we have to do this again and again, even in spiritual practice. So you're experiencing it right now on your path, sobriety. We have to let go of the familiar shore, let go of the known, let go of our habit pattern identity, who we have been, how we have oriented to life, and then venture out like into the ocean. This is what it's like. We don't yet see the next shore. We don't yet see where we will land. The courage that takes, okay, the only way to meet that is through beginner's mind, is through reverence to the dark. I'm willing to trust the unknown. I'm willing to trust the mystery from which we all came and to which we will all return one day. And so how do we meet ourselves with the quality of care, of tenderness, moment by moment? Because as you know, it's moment by moment. How do we equally access the courage and reach deep and down to find out a level of courage we may never have accessed before in our lives? We keep getting more and more courageous. If you're really on your path of your practice, you're getting more and more courageous until the day you pass. More courageous, more compassionate. Those things go hand in hand. Who you are is fierce compassion. The thing is that I want to underline is this: we're living in a spiritually impoverished society. So even though we say we're quite evolved as a species, we're in the dark ages when it comes to compassion, relational intelligence, basic kindness, and equity. I think we all know that, yeah? And when we look to ancient traditions, I don't want to fetishize or romanticize the ancients, but there are certain societies that that had some stuff down that we simply don't now. There was an ability to be practicing partnership with life, partnership with nature, an attunement to the world, a level of wisdom that we've lost, but it's still who we are. We've just forgotten, and all we have to do is remember. Homo sapiens. Homo, human, sapien. Wise, wisdom. This is actually who we are. This is a day and age when what I'm pointing to is there's a whole lot of forces and momentum for the forgetting, for the trance of separation. And so I know that I grew up in a culture where it was like, you're not feeling good, or you're not okay, or here's a way you can fix that, change that, solve that, fill that. We have more ways to fill by reaching outside of ourselves to the external world than ever before in human history. And now we're learning, oh, wow, by those habits of reaching out and filling this empty space, I'm turning away from the very seat of my power as a human being. I'm turning away from the very force of love that illuminates me. So we can find ourselves in periods where we've forgotten this quality of love and strength because we've been turning away and filling for so long. Does that resonate with people's experience? Yeah, and it's the gift of Dharma practice, the generous gift that it gives us this invitation to return. And we can help one another return. And remember, one of my passions is relational mindfulness. I have a book called Relational Mindfulness, a handbook for deepening our connection with ourself, each other, our planet. And it's about really bringing our Dharma practice into all of how we engage, how you engage with your friends, your lover, how you engage with politics. It's about bringing our heart to how we engage so we can be helping one another to remember. Not holding this duality that says I can remember just when I'm with Sangha or sitting on the cushion and then I have to return to normal life. That's not how it works. The Buddha was a social reformer. The Buddha was a social reformer. It's about understanding our practice as an expression of medicine and power that we access within and offer to our world. World as self. World is self. That's what it is when we dissolve the lens of self versus other. And again, it's just that it's been a popular lens in the dominant paradigm for a long time. People just assume it's true. It's not. So we have just a few minutes left, and I want to really, really appreciate your presence today. I want to acknowledge with gratitude this technology that allows us to connect so intimately through screen. You know, it's all about quality of presence. As long as we show up from presence and deep listening, we can connect intimately through the portal of the screen, same as we could in person. And I'll let people know if you would like to go deeper with these teachings, with some of my offerings, you can simply visit my website, deborah.edentull.com. There's an offering happening in a couple of weeks. It's just a 3-week offering called Clear Heart, Clear Mind, offered in partnership with my husband, who is an incredible plant medicine healer, flower essence maker. And so it'll be about presence, Dharma practice, and partnership with nature. And I also have an upcoming New Year's retreat coming up that is a unique experience. I'll just say that it's an experience I offer each year, a process that I've been doing for 20 years that I love deeply. As the veil is thin around New Year, there's a threshold, an opportunity for us to let go of limiting beliefs even more powerfully than on some more casual days of our life. So you can find resources there as well as other Dharma talks and teachings. And I'd like us to pause for a minute. Close your eyes. Connect with your breath. Connecting with a sense of shared heart. This heart space that we share. I would like to offer to dedicate the merit of our practice today to all beings everywhere. May the duality between light and dark be dissolved so that we can access a wholeness that is our birthright, the partnership of light and dark in reciprocity. I'd like for everyone here to just consider for a moment a quality that you were reminded of in today's teaching that you'd like to bring to the rest of your day. Whether it's fierce compassion, efforting less, restorative darkness. Just name that to yourself. And let's gently open our eyes and bow together. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Wild Heart. A reminder that the practice of dana, any support for the teachings, is greatly, greatly appreciated in the spirit of reciprocity, of generosity. And I just want to say that it was lovely being here with you, really lovely. So be well.
Thank you